Hello, everybody. Cal Griffin with Julie and Xenon. Uh, Disclaimer: no religious recognition, identity, or any of the sorts shall be recognized. This is neutral territory, but is Jedi based in its teachings. And we work to go outside the box. So, thought. So, good afternoon, good day, good wherever you are. Hope your day's going well. So, and also expressed in this podcast alone. You might disagree with them. You might agree with them. You might think. I don't know. But anyway, uh, what a thought came today, or during a discussion earlier, a topic that got brought up was character, morals, adversity with Stoicism. So let me kind of lay the groundwork here that in Stoicism, we are to take we step back, take a look, and then with everything gathered, we make our choices and decisions, okay, with all the information. Now, how does that work with our character, our morals, and adversity? So, what do about Stoicism first? Basically, other than what I had mentioned, I kind of gave a cliff note, right? So we know about Stoicism so far, okay? That what it's to be, as some would think, as to be non-reactive, apathetic, right? Or at least one form. At least that's the opinion. Now, but Stoicism, in one form, is contemplation and examination of self in a way, the way I understand it. And with this, we learn ourselves and how we might react and for self development. We learn how to, in a way, be more reliant on self thinking and not let outside influences affect our judgment. So basically, in a way, what we're doing is removing ourselves from the situation. Because in the code, or one of the codes, it says there is no emotion. All right. Well, in that, there is no emotion. Wouldn't that kind of go along with Stoicism? Now that we think about it, and that, and some people would think that there is no emotion. Well, we learn to understand how our emotions might affect our decisions, right? So, either one of you, how would our character and our morals in adversity have that role, have a part in that? Where would we go from there? I know it's an open end. I'm leaving an open ended question here. So let's say you have a decision to make about, oh, I don't know, somebody think, one of you think about what would be a decision that would deal with your character, that would cause one to have to really examine one's character during adversity.
Buying a new pet?
What?
Said buying a new pet.
Buying a new pen. Where? Okay. Where are we gonna? Okay. So because we have a, we're gonna buy a new pet. Uh, So buy a new. Go to the corner. Jesus. Oh my God. Really? We're gonna go here with this today. So we've got a three-legged hamster. So how does this affect our character and moral and adversity? Okay. So
Responsibility and whether or not the person has experience with pets before.
okay. Um, let's see where we can go with this. Uh, all right. So the responsibility of pets. Okay. Say we've got a rabbit. Okay. He's a bit off, but he's still a rabbit, and he's got only three legs. I'm not sure where I can take this. Um, so how would we work with our morals on that? And though there is an adversity, what would one think morally on this? Um, Xenon, what would you think? How would you look at this based on the foundation I laid on the premise of the start here?
Oh, first you would have to weigh the cost of rabbits because they're considered an exotic pet. So it's not like you can go to a normal veterinarian. You have to find one that specializes in rabbit care. Then you would also have to weigh the option of, okay, if the rabbit only has three legs, you have to look at the lifespan per se, but also other challenges that may arise.
Okay.
Um, they would need different care than a normal four-legged creature. Um,
Okay.
so that's where I would start, and learning how to adapt your home as well,
Okay.
because there might be challenges in that.
Right. Okay. So, so we're looking at the adversity and the challenges of this, right? Okay. So, aside from the rabbit having only three legs and maybe a loppy ear that may be a bit shorter, I don't know. He got shorted in this whole makeup thing while he was in the uterus and in the womb. He got shorted. So I feel sorry for the guy, but but in this, how would we morally look at this? What would we morally do here? So in case anybody who is quite doesn't quite have the answer of what morals are um, offhand, it's the right and wrongs we live by, knowing the difference. So with that, with that, and in a stoic view, and with our character, how would we look at this and the decisions of possibly further down the road with this rabbit? Because people have pets and they go through these types of things all the time. So a rabbit, Jesus, or a dog. Oh my God. What, okay. So I'm really struggling how we can put this together, guys. Uh, so wouldn't we need to take ourselves out of the equation and what would be the best route of care, like Xenon was talking about, right? So, because I had no idea of care. I thought that an average vet could take care of them because of the way the whole heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, whatever else might all be the same in their functions, and I guess fundamentally, but habits are not something I'm always familiar. Rabbits are just a different thing. So, but so and with Stoicism in this enact and in this Stoic way, wouldn't one have to objectively look at, can one reasonably take care of a pet as such? And that instead of feeling sorry for the rabbit, well, let's give credit where credit's due. It would be easy to feel bad for a rabbit like that, right? He's cute, he's fuzzy, he's got eyes that look at you, and he's got one gimpy ear. And he's missing a leg. I guess we call him Lucky. So Lucky Patch, either way, so would it actually be for us to take something on that's this big of a challenge? Could we reasonably do it? Could we realistically do that? Okay.
I think it's the responsibility of the pet owner to know what they're getting into before they end up adopting a pet.
Okay, fair enough. It's a fair
For
statement.
example, there are several families that we knew of that during COVID had adopted pets. One of these families adopted some turtles, red ear slider
Okay.
turtles.
All
Red
right.
ear slider turtles, right? They're
Yeah.
aquatic. They smell. If you don't like it, they're very smelly. They're smelly turtles. They got tired of the turtles. Didn't realize that the tank was going to smell so bad. Decided they wanted to get rid of said turtles because the smell
Mm-hmm.
was so bad.
Right.
But nobody wants the turtles because this is
Okay.
a fairly it's a fairly common species of turtle. So it's not like people are looking to adopt this specific species of pet turtle. It's hard to get rid of them.
So
And they can't legally release it into the wild because if you release it into the wild, it takes up the habitat of a native turtle, which is going extinct because this species of turtle is getting released in the wild and taking over their habitat and their resources.
So the sliders are taking over the habit. I had a call come in, so yeah, I what you were saying there. So you got the sliders that are an invasive species to the area.
If they're released into the wilds, yes.
They take over, or potentially can take over
Mm-hmm.
the area. Okay. Now, a question I have: when they stink, are they talking like just kind of stale, funky water? Or are we talking like dead animal stink, like ass stink that bad? Which kind of,
Well, the turtles defecate in the water, so
so we're talking like stink like ass. We're talking like
yeah.
really wash your ass kind of stink. Okay.
It smells like filthy pond water.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That's worse. Worse. That's like having flushed the toilet in a week kind of stink. I don't know where this podcast is going to go today, guys. Pardon me, because we're kind of going off in left field here. Oh, guys, it's okay. I knew this was going to happen at some point. That's fine. Which is okay. So I could just hear Xenon in the back getting ready to start rolling around laughing here in a second. So, okay. So morally, you've got these stinky turtles. So we're talking about an ethics thing here too, right?
Yeah, so you're probably not going to want to have these turtles inside, so you have an outside space to do it, to house these turtles. You're probably
Okay.
going to want like a pond. So they have to have a space where they can get out of the water. If they don't, they can get shell rot and die. So
Right.
you have to have a space for that. You have to drain out the pond. to reduce the smell, and then refill it with good water. And it's not. Most people probably don't want to do that.
Ass rot, turtle stank, and stale non-toilet not for 7 days stank versus average turtle stink here, right?
Yeah.
So sorry about being so blunt with the terminology, but my brain is not 100% on. Um,
And then if you decide you want to get rid of the turtles, there's no one that'll take them, really. Unless you find someone who knows about these turtles, keeps adopting these turtles or whatever, and will take them,
right.
or someone new out of the boat that doesn't know what they're getting into.
Okay. So the character of the person that decides to release these turtles, wouldn't that be questionable?
They are doing something that is harmful towards a native species of turtles if they do so.
So this would be also immoral, right or wrong. The
Yeah.
native species. So in things that would throw in the ecosystem, right? The disrespect of living things. But yet, in captivity, are suffering as well, right? So, in that, where would one have to sit back and look at this besides just going on a whim and looking at the cute little turtles? Wouldn't this be where the Stoic view or a Stoic view, one of look at this, of going, is this a reasonable endeavor? Is this realistic? Well, say at first, yes, because say economically you were doing it, you had, everything alongside of it. And initially, yes, one could. And look and reevaluate, can I take care of these little sliders without affecting the environment around, you know, and the species with it, provided the person had done their research. If not, then that person is being dumb. But so, but the adversity in this would lay where would be the question. Where would the adversity in this be? The job loss or the income loss? And now that you have another mouth to feed?
Well, I mean, turtle pellets.
Okay, turtle pellets. But financially, the person's getting hard. Things are getting hard for them financially, which turtle pellets can become quite expensive, right?
You can get them in bulk.
Okay, yeah, you can get them in bulk. A pellet, you have to get a specialized turtle, more expensive.
Just for aquatic turtles.
Okay, aquatic turtle. So, talking about being able to go out to the local pond and just get seaweed here, are we? Or moss or whatever.
Well, I mean, you can get certain plants for aquatic turtles, but thing is, adults will just completely tear the plants up by the roots. Like,
Right.
will like eat all that in a day.
Right. So morally, we're looking at something that would affect things around removing a source. We're disrupting
Well,
the
you can get
ecological.
aquatic. You can acquire aquatic plants at a pet store.
Right. But then again, let's keep in mind that if someone has lost the income that they once had,
Then you can feed the turtle snails.
snails,
Yes,
but isn't that a seasonal thing
maybe.
for snails to
You can feed them.
actually?
You can feed them watermelon. You can feed them like strawberries. You can feed them snails.
Right. But if we're to look at this overall, if income wise things are becoming tighter, then wouldn't feeding full watermelon be taking from the mouths of the people in the family and the house? How would we manage ourselves in as in our character through this? Uh huh.
We would know what we're getting into before
Okay.
ever deciding on whether or not we were getting a pet.
Okay. But that's the
And then once the pet is gotten, that's a commitment.
okay. Yes. But however, in what was brought up here as a situation, what do we know about one's character? What is a typical definition or the definition of character? What? How are people? How our character is how one may conduct themselves, where they stay, how might they react, how might they be able to hold them together and maintain their position or maintain without reaction, right? Be able to not be influenced or affected, be able to keep themselves in good judgment. Okay. So, but yet understand everything going on, which still kind of in a way goes to Stoicism per se. And I might be totally off base here with this and in this relating, but our character is how we what maintain ourselves, how we keep ourselves together. So the adversity would be the lessened the lessened income, the reduction of resources, having to make a decision of we can't care for these turtles and this rabbit like it needs to be. So which do you get rid of? Which do you have to go of, because there's an emotional tie to each one, right? I mean, you're putting care into each one of these. And turtles, there's a herpetologist or a herp practitioner that you might could find. Okay, maybe easy enough. But what about a rabbit? So, which one would be easier to maintain if you had the adversity? We all have pets. Okay, we all have pets.
My aunt used to have a couple of dogs.
You've got,
But
yeah.
then she moved and they told her she couldn't have any dogs. So she had to choose, she decided that she had to choose between her dogs and only keep one of them, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So, and she was one of the dogs she was fostering.
Yeah.
Another one of the dogs was a purebred that was given to her. And the other
Okay.
one was the one that she had more of an emotional attachment to.
Okay. So the purebred, really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really matter too much other than bragging rights, right?
She had decided that since the purebred, I mean, he was a cute dog,
Yeah.
but she was like, I'm needing to have less dogs at this time. This dog is pretty desirable for the breed.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and he would sell for a lot. So she ended up getting permission to sell that dog so
Okay.
she could
Right.
move to this new place.
Right. So there was a. So we're looking at there was a realistic to get rid of the pure breed, right? To for rehoming,
Yeah.
and so from there, the one that was emotionally and physically and bonded to the owner, the better choice. Okay. Now, from my experience in the medical field, okay, there was a question that was brought up of you have two patients. One is older, one is younger, and they both have hip fractures. Okay. How would you look at this? They both have hip fractures. Which one do you treat first? And the time frame is, say, you have a 6 month window. Which do you treat? Which is more important to treat? How do you look at it? They're both, they're both, you have a versus a 45-year-old, 30-year difference, right? gets treated first. The class was had to think about this one also. We had to review the information of each of the patients. So as which one here health wise is going to be more fragile? Okay. So then we'll use the elderly people, the elderly, as the turtles. They obviously have to have more care, right? They have to have more of a specific diet and environmentally, right? Diet, care, situation has to be kept optimal. Okay. And in a sense, they could be more fragile. So here's where you look at what would be the health of each person. What is what they call the premorbidity, the family history? What's the care of what kind of health is the elderly person in versus the 45-year-old? Okay. Who can tolerate health wise the injury and its recovery time or it's being held off? Which one would be more fragile? You have a rabbit and you have a turtles. Okay. The elderly being the turtles, the younger person being the rabbit. I know it's kind of a weird comparison. It's kind of a weird, parallel here. But however, which would be the priority? And morally, because, okay, so which would be the priority? It's a tough question, isn't it? So,
The one who is
what?
more critical.
Yes. Why so?
Because they're less likely to survive as long as the other person.
Due to what?
Health conditions,
Okay. So
age,
we're saying yes.
on the circumstance.
Yes. So we would look at the elderly person, the 78-year-old, as being more fragile, right? Because their tolerance and their resilience would not be one of the 45-year-old, provided per the age differences, they're both in fairly good health. Okay. Maybe one has, say, a mild heart condition. Okay, we'll throw a little twister in there. So, yes, the elderly would be the one that would be treated first. Though, now on the other side, let's flip the script. You have the 45-year-old that has a blood condition versus the 78-year-old who, for the most part, age-related items, comorbidities, this would cause a reevaluation of things, now wouldn't it? So in this case, either A, you could find somebody, another specialist, a what is that, a orthopedic surgeon who could take on and find an open slot for the younger person due to their condition to go ahead and move things along. And this would be in a way like rehoming the turtles. So in this case, the one who is elderly would be held off a bit longer because they, in a way, would be a healthier individual, provided things were provided aside from the slight heart condition and observation and maybe upping the care would still be okay. So from there, so with that, you're looking at you would be looking at which is more important. So in this case, say you had shell rot with the turtles, okay, which would be the more of a health condition to be more concerned about. Because that can eat away the turtle shell, right? Which exposing the internals.
It's a condition where the turtle's been stuck in water for too long, and it causes their insides to be digested.
Oh, so they're eating themselves from the inside.
Mhm.
Oh, painful. Oh, wow.
So it'll cause cavities in the shell, and then it'll start caving in, and no
So
more
basically,
turtle.
they're deteriorating from the inside out.
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's no good. So yes, the turtles would have to be moved along before and before the affected rabbit. So the rabbit is pretty sound, right? It's got one leg, it's not there. It's got a gimpy ear, but other than that, rabbit's going to function. It'll move along. It'll get along. You know, won't be able to go outside and bounce around outside, but it'll be okay inside.
Is this rabbit losing a front leg or a back leg?
I don't know, Xenon. Which would be the more detrimental here? You're the rabbit expert in the group.
The back leg.
The back leg be missing? Yeah, because it can still propel itself with yeah, it needs its front legs to steer itself and support itself. Okay. Rabbits are kind of funny in that way. So a back leg being gone and a gimpy ear. Okay, for the most part, the rabbit's going to do okay. Nothing really majorly life-threatening. It was born without the leg.
If it doesn't have the back leg, it moves not so well. Front leg is easier.
Okay, so it would keep the back legs, but be missing a front leg. Okay, fair enough. Okay, we'll do that. So, and by all means, I want anybody who might be listening to this podcast. We're not making fun of either one of these animals. Okay, uh, we're just using these as examples of how one might have to maintain themselves with something like this. So we're looking at you enjoy the turtles and all that. So there would be the adversity of an emotional way on this, right? Well, and we would have to stand back of which is more reasonable, realistic to keep and to rehome. So the adversity would be the decision and the emotional investment and the time. And say maybe you've got a couple of kids, okay, which really like the turtles. So, and is more prone to the care of the turtles. But on the other hand, the parent would have to make the decision here. This would also test and put the parent in a moral, in their character morally, to have to look objectively at this. The happiness of the child or children, the main, happiness of the home, and so how would one weigh this out as we've covered? Financially, health wise, and then what's going to be the overall well being? All right. Overall well being would be in the long run and think ahead. It's like, okay, yeah, turtles. How long do turtles live? Sliders. How long do they live?
A long time.
We're talking like passing them down on to other people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking. You might as well put one in the will.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Maybe we need to learn to study turtles and how we might be able to like live longer than we do. I don't know.
Turtles live about the same as humans. Some species do.
Some species do, but let's face it, there are some turtles that are over 150 years old. You know, so so this is kind of a bizarre comparison and relating topic here, but it's an everyday thing. This happens all the time, whether we realize it or not. So let's put ourselves in this situation. Excuse me. Let's put ourselves in this situation. How would we look at it if we knew ourselves? And we do, assuming. assuming we're in the same situation, how would we need to stand back and evaluate what is our position? Where are things? What can I do? Where can I go with this? Can I do this? Should I? Even though I really don't want to give up either one. How would we do this? How can I do this? What would be our way to look at this to kind of have the best outcome? So this is where we have to step outside of ourselves. We have to look at this as a third party and look at it from the angle of the information in a non-biased fashion. It would mean that we could look at it as either I eat or the turtles don't, or the turtles eat and I don't. Or the family doesn't eat or goes without. And that even though we may not think so, our happiness along with it, our state of mind, our own well being, our quality of life, the quality of life for the turtle as well. Because in looking in Jediism, isn't there also falling back to the as life and its respect of all living things through the living force? And this also goes into the line of the ignorance and knowledge of who we are. So, in finding a home, we would still be maintaining respect towards the living thing. Same as the two patients. You have an elderly, you have a younger person that is still fairly robust, he's still fairly young. Now, it would still be a respect towards life because both would be seen to as getting care. But we also look at which is the priority, which would be more successful in surviving and living on? Well, we would want to ensure that as best as possible. And that would be where the adversity could come in mentally. We are undergoing the mental challenge of the decision of the question of, again, what should I do? Which would be best? As the Star Trekkies would say, the well being of the many outweigh the few, per se, I guess is what it is. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Um, so that's where this would be, the family being the many and the turtles being the few. And the rabbit would still be okay. So with the turtles, yes, you might have upset children, but children are resilient, and we would like to assume that in today's day and age that children are more fragile than we give them credit for. But in reality, children are more resilient than people would like to think. But however, as displeasing as it would be, it would be the best for everything. So everything, all included, in the respect of all living things, everybody and all included would be the many. Now I know that sounds a bit off, but look at it. All living things, which would be the many. And that in a way, the few would be our own personal feelings. This is where our character and relying on Stoicism and the Stoic view would be to look at this and break things down just to the information we have and what is necessary. And then we base our judgment on that and the decision by removing ourselves from the equation, from the situation. Now, in hindsight, which is always the best teacher, or one of the best teachers, we would reflect back on this and hold on to this information for future decisions and experience gained. So in essence, everything there that has been this rather left turning topic, thank you, would end up being a really great lesson, even though some people might say that's just as mundane as getting up and going to work every day. Would you agree? But on the other side, sometimes the situation can be unique. And turtles we don't come across every day. So I would say yes. But however, in light of things, anything can be a test of our character and how we maintain ourselves through it and the adversity. And how we can judge a situation and not let it affect us through its duration, maintaining ourselves, which again is our reflection of character, a reflection of our character. And that morally we would have covered what was the right thing to do. Because the wrong thing would be to let the turtle suffer and end up going through the whole shell rot thing, which that would not be good. Because who would want an animal to suffer that depends on us? Or we could turn it loose and it affect a species, a native indigenous species, right? Now, in me saying this, I want there to be a clause mentioned. This is by no means where anybody listening to this podcast turn around and make it for your own political statements, okay? I can see that very easily happening here. So I'm going to put the squash on that right now. These examples are what they are. Because in this day and light of temperature and the way things are, of the climate of society, no, this example shall not be used in that manner. So we have everything covered. We have taken the time to reflect. We have taken the time to look at things. Now, financially, things can change, okay? Say, through someone's hard work and efforts, they end up finding something that will bring the income back in to bring things back to where they were, okay? To put things back to where the home, living, quality of life improves. And then some. But with it, through that lack of financial income, through that having to be without, one learns to develop character and how to manage. And this is where one can learn themselves, learn more by how they might react, how they might think, how they might respond, and how they might respond and react to their own thoughts. And so, and let's think about how, from a emotional standpoint, how our emotions can affect our character, how they can affect our judgment, and ethically, how can we be compromised, and morally. Now, I'm not talking about becoming apathetic. By all means, no. When we learn that sometimes our own responses and reactions might need to be stilled, might need to be calmed and quieted. And then after everything is done, after we've made it through and we've grown, then we can sit back and take a deep breath, break down, cry, whatever. Let ourselves emotionally release. But it's that character and how one maintains themselves emotionally through it. Okay? And this is where learning to grow through adversity can help us, where our morals will be tested and questioned through adversity. This is where we can look at not what we're losing, but what we're gaining. We're gaining the experience, which are things that we learned from. So, in what I'm going to leave with today and leave a thought with somebody, with anybody, is in these situations, how would you be able to place yourself in another person's place? How would you, in a way, to be able to possibly see how this person would think? So you might consider your own actions. I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for this rather different cast today, and I kind of appreciate it. And thank you for the dog and the turtles and the rabbits. Anyway, thanks everybody. I hope everybody has a good day, good evening, morning, whatever, with your cup of coffee and whatever you may do. Share the love with each other, take care of each other, be good to each other and to yourselves. Cal Griffin out. Thank you. Signing off.